All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Tequila Tuesday. I think this is number 38, if memory serves, 38th edition of Tequila Tuesday. Today, we're going to talk about coaching, all things sales coaching with none other than the master of sales coaching himself, who created an entire company all about sales coaching. Dave Kennett is the founder and CEO of a company called Replayz. I've known Dave for couple of years actually now. Got introduced by our mutual friend Scott Parker, and I've done a little bit of work in helping him and advisor to the company. A big believer in what he's up to and what he's building. I'll let him talk a little bit about it, but gonna let him roll through his talk tracks and cover the things that he wants to cover. But one of the things that he and I talked about that we're hoping people get a little bit brave and excited about is to do maybe some live call coaching. So I put in my post today, hey, if you have, a pitch and you want to practice and you want to get some feedback, now is a good time to do that in the privacy and comfort of your living room and Tequila Tuesday. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dave. I'll pay attention to the questions as usual, take people off mute, and we're all in good hands. Dave, thanks for coming to the show, man, and teach us. We're ready.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Really been looking forward to this, like, honestly. And you know why? Because I'm asked to present a lot of the time, but there's not a ton of time to actually usually interact. And having like a full hour and a half to do a bit of both is like rad. Like, where else can you do that? And with a nice, quaint group, like this is far better than having 100 people or anything like that. I know it ends up getting sent out and distributed to over 150 people. And a lot of familiar faces here too. It's great. Jessica, and I was just talking to Vicky earlier on today, Patrick Kennett, who's been a freaking amazing customer of ours for years and just moved to an important role over at Nova Credit. So great to see y'all. Lots of familiar faces here. All right, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Kennett, as Scott mentioned, and founded Replayz about 2.5 years ago. Just show of hands, I see we don't have everyone on camera, and that's cool. Like, do your own thing. I know people are multitasking. It's just nice to have you here. But a show of hands of folks here, how many people have Replayz before? Okay, so we've got about okay, I don't know, I'd say about 60%, 70%. Okay, all right. Well, I'm very pleased with the 70% actually. And in terms of the crew here, if you wouldn't mind dropping in the chat what your company and title is, I'd super appreciate it. I want to customize this as much as possible. In terms of what we're going to cover today, I really want, we got some Dooley folks. That's great. I really want this to be about you. You may have seen in Scott's post earlier or mine that we're going to be doing a little bit about customer stories. It's just something that we really don't seem to see enough of. I think if there's two things, I think account executives and SDRs actually, and CSMs could be better at. One is weaving in customer stories naturally, and the other is discovery. And we all know that, right? We all know that we can be better at that. I think that is the most important aspect of the sales cycle. But customer stories weave into that. All right, so thanks for dropping in sort of titles and companies here. That's super helpful. The next thing I'm going to ask is, let me give a bit more context on what we do so you can see where this data is coming from that I'm sharing with you. And then I'm going to ask you what you would love for me to cover today, ideally, or talk about, or what have you. Replayz has been around for 2.5 years. I've been a senior leader in sales leader in tech for years. And I really just wished that, I never got around to call coaching as much as I could have, nor did my directors or sales managers. And I was looking for an outsourced call coaching company, and I couldn't find one. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll give this a try, and went out and started this company. And it's thankfully, fast forward today, and we have coached the likes of some of the highest growth tech companies out there, whether it be Vidyard or Outreach. Patrick Caddick's awesome company who's at Where to Go. IBM's a customer, but our sweet spot really is Series A, B, C companies in terms of our customers. But in terms of whether I saw there's some larger organizations here, Oracle, et cetera, this is super practical for you as well, because we coach anyone that's from SMB and high velocity sales, right? Like from oh, by the way, this is not an advertisement for Replayz. Like, I don't want to talk. I just want to tell you the perspective through which we're coming from here. You know, and kind of the boundaries of what you can ask me, which is pretty much anything. And I'll tell you if I don't know. With respect to navigating through sales conversations, ask me about email cadences and crap like that. Like, that's not me. We don't do that. I'm not good at that. It's about anything from hello to goodbye in a modern day sales call, and specifically tech. We only coach SaaS companies, and everyone's super high growth within our customer base. And but whether it's high velocity sales, that's a 5 to 8K ACV, or SMB, mid-market, 30 to 50K, more enterprise, like, you know, 50, 60, 70 to 100 to maybe 250K deal, or very strategic deals. Like, we actually coach folks at IBM on $150 million deals. And we've got a team of coaches that does that, aligns very well to their process. And so through watching thousands of calls now, and keep in mind, you might not know, we actually have the win rate data for every single one of our reps. So we get to see what the most effective reps are doing consistently. We bottled that up into what we call our 100 best practices, and we coach to that. We do call reviews, simple as that. And what I want to share with you today, and I think why Scott invited me on, is to kind of take the best of what are some of the do's and don'ts that we find reviewing all these calls specific to customer stories. But then I want to make it much broader than that and start talking about discovery and when you're doing your demo and how to, you know, keep deal momentum going and that kind of thing. So I'm a big fan of not doing a huge intro, and I feel like I just did one, but I also feel like the context was important, so you had a sense as to what we're covering. Can you drop in the chat here areas that you'd like to cover today, and I'll make sure I do my best to get to them. And as Scott said, like in the chat just now, if anyone's up for actually doing some coaching or want to do a role play with me, and you can put me on the spot, I'm happy to be the customer. If you're like, I just don't or the salesperson, if you're like, I just don't know the best way to handle blah, like, I'll do it. Like, throw me out there, no problem. But I would love it if some of you would step up and do that as well. All right, let's have a look at what we've got in the chat here. Please drop in like whatever you want covered today, above and beyond just customer stories. And can you, for the folks that I can see screen, can you just put your hand up? Is spending, I don't know, 20 minutes, because I promised Scott I'd put together some real good learnings here. I think customer stories are so important. I was going to spend 20 minutes on it. Customer stories, hands up. Would that be helpful to go through that? Yeah. Okay, dynamite. Let's do it. Oh, Jessica's like, this is like Replayz Live. Yikes. Scott's been on Replayz Live. I don't know if you guys have seen it. People throwing themselves out there and doing live role plays and getting judged like American Idol for sales. And okay, so yeah, and thanks for that framework there, Scott. Anything from intro, transition to next steps, start of demo, customer stories, any of that stuff. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'll dive into the customer story bit, and then let's really just try and spend 20 minutes to half an hour on that. And then let's expand through to other areas. I don't want to just make this a big feature dump. So let's just, like, you know, start with some talking. I think I've talked way too long here. Maybe we, you know, I don't know, for typical protocol here, Scott, is it cool if we do the hands up thing and then you can call on people, or I can call on people?
Yeah, either way, that's fine.
All right. All right. So let's do, once I start sharing screen, I'll ask you to let me know because I won't see, but now that I'm not sharing screen, let's just start with, why do customer stories, why should we give a crap? Why do they really matter? Hands up, who wants to just start there? All right, let's go with Jessica first. And Jessica Knight, sorry. And feel free to use the little emoticon on your thing. You go to reactions on the bottom. I think we all know this after 2 years of Zoom calls, but review it anyway and just hit the raise hand icon. But Jessica Knight, go ahead.
Yeah, so what we found and what is highlighted at Lessonly is that when like the customers can see themselves in another customer, it makes them not feel alone. It makes them feel seen and heard when I say, hey, like I have you. So I don't know if that was what you were looking, if you actually wanted me to answer the question why I feel it's important, but or did I totally miss that?
You didn't totally miss it at all. That's exactly what I was asking. And I don't think I knew you moved to Lessonly. Congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome. All right. Who else? Feel free to put up your real hand or a virtual hand. and love to hear why else customer stories are important. All right, yeah, let's go with Brian. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. For us, it's super important because Talroo is sort of an unknown entity, and having customer stories of success gives us the illusion, or not illusion, but gives some concrete evidence that we're out there in the world, we're doing good things for other companies. We may be able to do the same things for other people. It gives a little backing to that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing, y'all. Why don't I share a screen here and start going through some of this stuff. In terms of, let's start with a couple of small, fun little exercises here. This is not your typical, how would you sell this pencil? Because that, I don't like ripping stuff off. But this is kind of a fun one. What would you pay for this pencil? And it's rhetorical. You don't have to bother putting in silly answers, or you can put in silly answers if you want. You know, I'm guessing 5 cents, 2 cents, wouldn't pay anything, get it cheaper at Walmart, whatever. But now if I told you that, and can everyone see my screen? Yeah. If I told you that this pencil was used by President Kennedy in the Cuban Missile Crisis, he was a big doodler, and you know, world was on brink of destruction. There he was doodling away during the actual Cuban Missile Crisis, and suddenly this pencil might feel a different meaning to you. Now, let's put political affiliation aside. You know, regardless of the political party here, you've got an emotion that was probably evoked somewhat from what I just said. Could be bad, could be good, could be nostalgic, could be pride, whatever it is. And now if I asked you how much you pay for this pencil, some of you might still say nothing. I bet you most of you would say more than 5 or 10 cents. And if I said this was the exact pencil used by President Kennedy for this doodle that we have here. So the lesson here is obvious. You know, and by the way, like, we're talking as peers here, right? We've all been in sales for years. We all get the business. So the last thing I want you to feel is that I'm being lectury here. Like, this is us just having a conversation, right? But and there's going to be points here you're like, dude, I get it. Like, you don't have to, but there's going to be other points. Hopefully you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that perspective. So on this one, the obvious point is I was able, in under sort of 20 seconds, I was able to assign a brand new meaning to this object here. And I did it through a story. It wasn't an amazing story. I didn't tell it in an amazing way, but the fact that we shared a story gave it meaning, gave it value, gave it a different value than it had 20 seconds before that.
Hey, Dave, real quick, we've got a blank white screen that you're sharing with us right now.
Oh, shoot. Well, that's terrible. Did you see the thing that I shared earlier or no?
No, I don't think any of us got it.
Oh, how's that?
That's what we're looking at.
I love it. Look at that. That's what you're looking at. Now, let me tell it again. No, I'm just joking. So if I were to share this with you, there's President Kennedy's exact doodle that you're seeing there. And suddenly this has a lot more value, especially now that you can see it. Next point here, we've all, you know, I'm a huge fan of this quote by Maya Angelou. I'm sure you've all heard it. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. People will never forget how you made them feel. And yeah, we're sellers, but we've got certain, you know, points we need to cover when we talk to prospects. But at the same time, the folks that are buying, yeah, there's a certain level of like left brain thinking that goes into their buying, but ultimately there's an emotional aspect to it. We all know that, right? And when you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, hopefully we've all gone through that exercise where we're buying software and we want to see how the person's doing and how they made us feel. But I think too often we don't think about that. The forest for the trees thing. We jump onto a call, back-to-back Zoom calls. We're jumping onto the next one, maybe did a bit of pre-call planning, hopefully. And we kind of forget, like, hey, this human here is a human, or this group of people, they're going to leave an impression of me, of how I made them feel. And am I going to make them feel rushed? Am I going to make them feel stressed out because I'm going from point to point? And I want to do a very quick exercise here. You know, I want you to think through either, you know, maybe just put it in the chat. What are 3 ways that when you're on the call with a prospect, or if you're a CSM with a customer, how do you want to leave them feeling? There's no wrong answers here, right? What are some of the things that you would want them to be saying when they leave the call or thinking in terms of, wow, I really felt blah. Understood. That's good. That was a good use of my time. Trust. Yep. I mean, trust is so important. Feeling heard, learn something valuable, educated.
I want them to feel this exact phrase. Fuck, I need to buy that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotional answers so far. So I'm gonna get away from the feelings and go right to like, I want them to be like, shit, I need to buy that.
Yeah, I love it. Mr. Capitalist over there, just saying what we're all thinking. Yeah, no, I love it. Okay, great. Easy to interact with, what Scott said, I need this. So that's great. Now, I'd like you to take a second and rank yourself out of 10. If you did an exit poll of maybe think about your last sales call, or maybe think about the last 10 sales calls in general. And someone did an exit poll and said, hey, how did that sales rep make you feel? What would they rank you out of 10 in doing that? And like, hey, I've been a 5 and a 6 and a 2 on things before, and sometimes a 9 and 10, but don't feel bad to actually be honest here and vulnerable. That's what we want here, right, Scott? Vulnerability, that's how we grow.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I had one today that I feel like I probably got like a 8.5 on.
Oh yeah? Why don't you tell us about that? Is it for the, fuck yeah, I want them to, was it 8.5 on that?
Yeah, the reason that I'm deducting a 1.5 from myself is because they want to work with me, but they don't know how and in what aspect. And one of my challenges right now is there's so many different things that I do and can do that it overwhelms. And so I'm deducting a 1.5 from myself because I was too much like, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. And so they left being like, we need to do something. I'm just not totally sure what it is yet. And that's an error on my part.
Yeah.
In my mind, at least. I see Wayne is nodding his head. He just likes the fact that I fucked up.
Yeah, you must have the same problem I do, Scott, where the expectations going on to a first call are very high for you and I. Given what we do, we are the product.
Yeah.
And if we don't do well, obviously they're thinking, well, how good is this actually going to be? So extra pressure on us. And I think it's okay for us to take that pressure off and just say, we're human. Let's do our best.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I guess the takeaway here is obvious as well. Take your chance, just 30 seconds before you jump on a call, center yourself and think, all right, I've done my pre-call stuff. I know who's going to be on. There's this VP finance, there's this CMO, there's my champion. Not only how do I want to connect with them in terms of our value, etc., but emotionally, how do I want to make them feel and leave the meeting? Let's spend a second on this. I'd like to hear from some other folks. Please share, put your hand up and let us know how you're feeling. And I really want to spend a minute on this. So I'd love it if one or two of you would put up your hand and give us your thoughts on things. All right, let's go, Tiffany. Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah, I think one of the ways, and it's hard because I always like to be talking, but I think one of the ways that people feel valued and feel heard is if you practice active listening. And so making that conscious choice to listen more than you talk is automatically going to give them that connected feeling.
100%. It's a sign of respect, and it's a sign of trust building, them feeling heard, right? So I totally agree. And part of feeling heard is you reiterating what they said, just to ensure you've got like a complete, full understanding, right? Which I'm sure is part of your process. All right, cool. One other one. I'd love to hear from someone else here as well. Thanks for sharing, Tiffany. And come on, guys. I suppose, aren't people drinking during this too? Or some people, I expected a crazy, wild audience here.
They're not that wild. I don't know. I try to set the tone, but they're not that wild.
Yeah. Come on, one more person. I want to hear, come on.
Cynthia is usually good for at least 1 or 2 margaritas.
Okay, good. Well, we got Wayne. Wayne, go ahead, man.
I want to echo what Scott said. When you get off a call and someone says, I just need to find a way to work with you. that's when you know that you have built trust. They like you, and they kind of, you kind of pass the baton of responsibility a little bit over to them to make the running, which helps. It's not you doing it all the time. So actually, Scott, I just came off a call, not dissimilar to yours. I give myself a 9 out of 10 because they're gonna, we've pretty much nailed down. I'm at that next step where I was at your step about a week ago, and I'm at the next step now where it's like, okay, this is what we want to do, and this is what we need to do. And I'm going to come back to you by this date with a proposal that is definitely going to work. It's going to have all the elements that I need. So I just want to echo what Scott said. That resonates with me, which is why I was nodding my head earlier.
Sweet. Thanks, Wayne. Appreciate you sharing, man. I mean, just yesterday I had a call, and I like to feel like building trust, right? People like to buy from people that they trust. And I know I do. And I broke that in the first 3 minutes of the call. I was 3 minutes late. My daughter was on the way to school, and then she refused to go because she had a bad stomach ache. And I was dealing with that 30 seconds before the person was supposed to pick her up. And then there's something on our website that we just changed, and the copy I didn't notice the copy on it. Anyway, it anchored our pricing way too low. And so this person was waiting for me for 3 minutes. I obviously profusely apologized, still no excuse, but it happens. And then I did the whole pitch, and good back and forth, good discovery, did discovery for 40 minutes. We got to the pricing, and he's like, okay, so show me this $250 per person pricing. Where did you get that? It's like, it's on your website, man. I'm like, oh, okay. So, websites changed now, obviously, but those kind of things happen. Thankfully, they don't happen that often, but they happen. And so that you didn't exit poll that person. It's like, that person is going to give me a 1 out of 10. I ended up discounting his price so much just because because I'm the owner and founder, and I'm like, this was a terrible experience for you. I just did it. I'm like, just so you know, I never discount. I just don't. Patrick will tell you that. Any one of my customers on here will tell you that. But this guy, he's only got 2 reps, and I'm going to do something for you here. So normally we've got 30, 40 reps, that kind of thing. And thank you for whoever mentioned my Canadian accent here, Sanjay. All right, Canadian accent. Have you heard a few A's from me? There's all sorts of different Canadian accents, right? You got the Quebec accent, you got the Newfoundland accent. I'm Vancouver, I'm British Columbia, so more West Coast. Anyway, all right. Thanks, gang. Let's get into some interesting stuff here. So we went through this exercise, and I think what I'd like to skip to now is another quick exercise here that leads up to storytelling, and that is, I'd like you to now throw in the chat here. What are the top key differentiators of your organization? What are the 3 things that you know what, might be 1 or 2. That's cool. Just share 1 or 2 with us, or the one that sticks out, but something that you do better than everyone else. And I'd like to start with that before we kind of get into our next part here. Oh, and we got some sports fans going on here too. Right on. I love it. Go Bills.
Who's got top 3 differentiators? Don't make me go first all the time.
Yeah, throw them in the chat here, please, guys. I just throw even just one. Like, what's a differentiator of your organization? If the first question that they asked you was, "Hey, I don't want to hear the rest of discovery," just tell me how you're different, right? What are 2 or 3 words you're going to put there?
I know. I can tell you what people don't want to hear. Oh, we have better service.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yeah, not a differentiator. That's like, yeah. What is that like? Let's see who can do the best comparable. Yeah. That's like me going to, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's price of admission. It's table stakes, right?
Yeah. There you go, Jessica. You got call coached already.
It's like me erases my answer. Yeah, it's like, I know what it is. It's like going into a sushi restaurant, and them saying, what we do better than everyone else is we have California rolls. Right? That's like, of course you do, but why are you better? What is it we're getting here? What's the, Do we really have 0 people? I don't mean to get on you here, but this is the first time I've ever been in a group session. Maybe I'm not seeing the right chat, but I'm not being flipped by saying that. But hopefully, let's throw some stuff in here. We can't really work with this. A community, yeah, that's powerful. Community, key differentiator. We're for fitness, by fitness. You understand your customer set, Dale. They know that you understand them. They get that. They appreciate it. Omar with the ease of use. I mean, hey, ease of use actually can be when you're first to market with a new system that used to be super bulky with all the other alternatives, sure, right? All-in-one platform, absolutely. Can be good and bad, but the good stuff is consolidate vendors, all in one place, one throat to choke, all that stuff.
There we go. You got some coming now.
Yeah, some awesome stuff I'm seeing here. Blended data sets to make the spend more cost effective. Fast responses, increased availability.
Okay, but so fast responses and increased availability is nice. Defining that is wonderful. What is a fast response? I have no idea what you mean. Is that 1 day? Is that 1 hour? Is that 1 minute? I don't know. What is increased availability? Is that 24/7 or is that regular business hours? I don't know. So if you're just leaving it right there, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but if you're just leaving it at that, that's like surface level to me. It doesn't really tell me that much. That's a platitude and that's fluff.
Yeah, and I think the way I look at it is it's okay to say that, start there and then dive it down, right? So what we tell people is we improve win rates, but then I actually go as far and say, on average, you'll see a 2 to 5% improvement in win rate from your team after 3 coachings. I wouldn't say one without the other. So I would look at it as a funnel. Yeah, start broad, but then make sure you're giving them something that's actually a little bit measurable and specific. Great call out, man. Great call out. Okay, so Cynthia, this one's for you, Scott. What's Cynthia drinking? What's going on there? Is that 2 drinks per?
There it is. That's the standard right there. That's the go-to mark right there.
All right. All right.
She needs about 15 minutes and she'll have a question or 2.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Well, now this is awesome participation. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go to the next step of the exercise here. What are the pain points that you solve for that match to those differentiators? And, you know, this is where it gets interesting, right? Because it's like, that's your differentiator. But if I'm a prospect, why should I care? What's the thing you're solving for me? Think of your buyer persona that you normally talk to and think about the pain point they have that pairs to the thing that your differentiator. And please throw it in the chat.
Pero él sabe que su equipo es un equipito. Se me dice, nos hubieran podido golear peor, pero parece que han cambiado un huevo.
Catherine, that's not exactly what we're looking for.
El tercer gol fue una equivocación del arquero de...
I can't find her to mute her. Catherine, zip it. Got her.
I know Catherine. Hey, Catherine. That was awesome. That was great. Okay. All right. So time, flexibility, price. Companies want to help their people, but they don't know where to start. Okay. All right, great. So we're going to do building blocks of a customer story, and that'll be the outcome of this in the next 10 to 15 minutes. The next building blocks. So we've got your differentiator. We've got the pain that it ties to. And now I want you to think through a customer story that ties to that. And this is where I would just love some awesome back and forth here. And then I'm going to get into what we call customer story sound bites, which is our process for doing customer stories that we recommend. A number of you have been through Replayz Masterclass, and a number of you have been coached by Replayz, so you know it. But I'm curious, when you think of your pain point and you think of your differentiator, and let's say we're on a call, and I'll role play it first. You know, I'll be the salesperson for Replayz, and let's say Scott, you've just said I have no time. Scott, you say I've had no time to call coach lately.
I've had no time to call coach lately.
All right. Well, you know what? I totally hear you. That's how most of our customers feel when they first come to us. And how we solve for that, it reminds me of a key customer story, actually, is one of our actually, let me rewind. So what I would start with is by doing the what and making them feel heard. Like, okay, I heard you, there's empathy. Then I'm about to launch a new customer story, but before I do, I'm going to do what's called the so what. And I'm going to put this process up in a second. But the so what is, all right, I hear you. We can help with that. Why should you care? So I'd be like, hey, we totally solved that. I understand where you're coming from. It's, what we are is an on-demand sales call coaching company. He's like, well, what is that? Like, so what? So the so what, like why we're asking him to now pay attention is because we find that our customers improve win rate for their sales reps. Average order size goes up and sales cycle goes down very, very quickly, even after 3 sessions with our team. Okay, now I've probably caught Scott's attention. And then I launched into the customer story. And so I've empathized, I've sort of regurgitated back what I heard. I've said that, hey, you know what, you're in good company. A lot of our customers have that challenge when they come to us and we solve for it. Here are 3 metrics that we actually improve there. And then I'll be like, when Vidyard first came to us, we had the same person as we had the vice president of sales, same position as you in your organization, say the same thing. They just didn't have time for call coaching. So we jumped in, we understood their process. And fast forward to today, we've been coaching them for 2 years. Every single sales rep of every single market segment gets a call review every 3 weeks. And they've had 80% growth last year and 80% to 90% the year before. And is that all because of Replayz? Of course not. But do they look at us as an absolute key secret weapon? Yeah, they do. And they just renewed again this year. So I think we can really help you. All right, so that's my sort of framework for customer stories. So what I want to ask, I'm not going to ask you to do the whole framework, but what I am going to ask, actually, Scott, how did that story make you feel? Critique me. Is there anything that, it was a little clunky there at first, but overall, what are your thoughts on that framework and how it made you feel?
I think it made me feel like there needs to be more. It needs to be punchier. Like you didn't evoke enough emotion in me. You said it very calmly and like respectfully.
Yeah.
And I don't talk that way, as most people know.
Yeah.
I think one of the keys to being successful, especially when you give feedback, is to learn how to say really sharp, difficult things in a way that people love you for. So one of the things that I would, that I'm maybe known for a little bit is like, I will go in on somebody and be like, no, should be this particular way. And it can be perceived as fairly harsh. And Cynthia's rolling her eyes because she's been the recipient before. But those same people come back to me and say, that's why I love you. That's why I'm here. That's what I need because you tell me, the truth, right? So to the story part, it's like, listen, you don't have enough time to call coach, right? That's what I'm hearing. I get that. I talk to sales leaders all across the country. They all tell me the same thing. What are you dealing with? Well, you're probably in fucking 8 hours of executive meetings every single day, listening to the finance guy tell you why we can't hire more people, right? And you're listening to the HR director tell you we need to go through these particular trainings. So now I'm painting a story of misery. Because if you're a VP of sales, being in those meetings are absolutely miserable, right? So I see Kyle nodding his head. He's like, yeah, dude, seriously, get me out of those meetings. He knows, right? So now I'm connecting on like a painful, visceral level. Right? So now I want to kind of tie it into like, well, what we do is we take some of that off your plate. So you don't have enough time to do this stuff yourself because you're stuck in these things. Your reps and your team need this. We provide that to you on an on-demand kind of basis. So to me, like if I was critiquing you, I'd be like, Dave, you need to be more emotive. You need to be more punchy. You need to go for the jugular a little bit. You need to make somebody feel miserable for a second so you can make them feel lovely right afterwards.
I love it. Yeah, we call that's great feedback, man. We call that giving them the headache and then handing them the Tylenol. And, that's really what you were trying to do there. And that's what I could have done a better job of doing there. You're absolutely right. And Scott was also talking about mirroring, right? Like, when am
I the only one who heard that?
I heard that. And it's not Halloween anymore.
Just making sure.
Yeah, that would be. Anyway, I hope whoever that was okay. Yeah. Anyway, so Scott, I also, what Scott's talking about there as well as mirroring, right? I gave my generic thing for someone who's maybe more low key, etc. I didn't address it to a Scott who I know is more punchy, who I know is more high energy, who is no BS, get to the point, be right, be factual, get out kind of thing, right? And so that's all fair point. The framework is gold. The framework works. There's those of you who have taken, masterclass, and the one framework thing I heard from Scott there that he would add is when you hear a pain and you acknowledge it, go a couple steps further to actually demonstrating that you understand what your prospect's persona is feeling and that you identify with it and that you're well versed in it, because we all know we want to be considered the expert, right? And that's one great way to do it. And I love that. That's like a great tweak to our customer story soundbite. So mirroring and a little bit more validation / street cred building so that they know that they're associated, that you've got a common understand their challenge. All right, and then we see from David here, not outreach or sales off. I can save reps 2 hours a day. What does that mean? 2 more hours of prospecting a day per rep, 3 more meetings a week. Right, so you're talking about
I'm just for shits and giggles, just doing a back of the napkin. So, okay, so wait, so you got a third win rate, that means one this, and your ACV is 15. And it's like, and then for me, it's always, and if I could give you 540K per, what would you do with that? Like, what does that mean for headcount capacity? What does that mean for your waterfall and building out for growth? What does that represent?
Yeah.
So I want to do the emotional, but I also want to catch them with the rationale of, well, let's use your numbers, right? Back of the napkin, what does this represent? Especially if you've got somebody who says, we like you a lot, but we're thinking maybe we'll talk to you in 6 months. And you're like, okay, so I just used your numbers here, right? And we agreed it's 540, and let's just round it down to 500. You're comfortable pissing away 250 per rep for something I can get you live in like 10 days? Okay.
Quantifying the pain, everyone. Nice work, David. Quantifying the pain, right? That's what we're doing there. I love it. And most reps don't do that, right? Probably most of us on here do. I don't do it all the time as well as I could have, but most reps don't do that. Here, I'm sharing a document here with you. There's 3 quick links in there. One is to our Replayz masterclass, which ties into our customer story stuff that I'm going to show you in a bit. One is a worksheet. It's called the Customer Story Soundbite Worksheet. And the other is just my LinkedIn, like, please connect with me. I'd love to hear from you. But let's start with, let's just start with the worksheet. When I open this link here, the link that you're going to see for the worksheet in the document I shared is going to invite you to make your own copy, and then you should see what's on my screen. Scott, can you see my sheet here that says effective storytelling? Okay.
Yep, I got it.
Okay, great. So this is a template that I wanted to give to everyone. And this really goes over exactly what Scott and I just role played there. And what you'll see in here is you put the pain, you put the differentiator, you put the customer name, and then the next step down here is pain, differentiator, and this is where you could go a step further, like Scott said, and really like just have them feel the headache, and then the so what, like why should I care, and then the customer story. And the thing about customer stories, we see reps doing a few things that just don't land. Number one, most reps will say, oh yeah, I've got a great white paper for that. I'll send it to you. And they think they've just told a customer story. It's like, no, like they're not going to open that white paper ever. So the other thing we see is people taking like 5 minutes to tell a customer story. And that's just wasting valuable time. Time is money on those calls. And we want to respect our prospects' time. They're not listening to anything after a minute anyway on that story. And then other people will do what we call an oblique reference. Like, oh yeah, IBM's a customer. Now, is that helpful? Of course it is to build street cred, but it's not a customer story, right? And so when we're sharing those, of course, we want them to be relevant to the persona. You know, one thing we see all the time is your companies will give you 2 case studies and none of them are relevant to the startup, or maybe they're large Fortune 100 companies, and you have a SMB rep who's starting to, have a conversation with a prospect, and they're referring to this like crazy expensive solution for this Fortune 100 company. And suddenly you've lost them. They're like, that's not interesting to me. Like, clearly I can't afford your solution, or it's not the right fit. So what we want to do with customer stories, of course, is make sure they're relevant to the industry. If you can, if you don't have industry, that's fine, but at least market size. And then of course, to your actual prospect. CFOs care about something way different than CMOs care about. So, that's a real key part. And someone here, Kyle, said, you need to know your case studies so well you can customize it to the prospect. Completely agree. What I recommend, what our customers do, and this lands super well, is they take their case studies and they put it into this framework, and they share it with their teams, and they say, hey, like, here's a worksheet. Let's all put our customer stories in here. And the last part of the customer story that we didn't talk about as much is super important to say the name of the customer and what they do. And you might say, why do I have to put what they do? That's just killing dead space. Well, no, it just adds credibility and legitimacy. We know that that so many folks out there, unfortunately, have a bad opinion of sales. So they're going to call BS a lot of the time. So the more we can validate that this is real, right? And here's the name of the customer, here's what they do, here's the pain they had when they called, here were the results, but ROI driven results that matter to your customer. All right, so I've shared.
Dave,
yeah.
I want to pause here and and let Thomas come off mute, because Thomas has an interesting question and a framework for this, and it's around not necessarily selling a product, but selling yourself and how to put it into this kind of framework. Thomas, you want to take yourself off mute and ask your question?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Dave, nice to meet you.
You too.
So my question is really around how can I work on selling myself through some interviews rather than the core product. That's kind of the area that I'm having issues with right now, is more selling myself rather than the actual product that I might be selling in the future.
Cool. I heard you say interviews. Do you mean job interviews?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'd love to hear everyone else's opinion here too. My 2 cents is, first and foremost, there's the coachable and the non-coachable. And Scott, I know you've posted on this a lot as well, right? As a hiring manager for years and years, and still am, I absolutely look for demonstrated success in the past. But there's certain things that you could have demonstrated success in the past, and the person has a huge ego and they're not coachable, or they actually just don't have drive. Maybe they stumbled upon a bit of success in the past. But I'm always looking for those innate non-coachable skills. I can't babysit a team. No one has time to babysit a team. And so if you're bringing to the table the fact that you're driven, and you can prove that with data and examples from the past. So there's your customer story when you're interviewing. Here's how I can demonstrate to you. I'm not just telling you the thing you want to hear. I am a self-starter. I am driven. You don't need to handhold me, and I can ramp quickly. Let me show you how I've done that in the past. That's key. So I look for, and a good attitude. Like, you know what? I'll fire people for bad attitudes, left, right, and frickin' center. Like, do you want to work on a team with a bunch of people with bad attitudes? You don't deserve that. You're working hard every frickin' day. You deserve a team that lifts you up. And I'm not saying I'm not that guy that goes and just fires a bunch of people, but I will. If I see someone bringing someone down in a big way, and what have you, I'll have a conversation with them, as they should with me if I have a bad attitude, and just say, hey, like, what happened there? Because that's not the kind of culture we're building. It's not how we want our team to feel. It's not how we want our customers to feel. Help me understand, just having a bad day, or like, and so my point is, we've all worked with people with crappy attitudes, and we don't like it, and their customers don't like it. So if you can demonstrate that you've got it's table stakes these days to have the actual skills. It's the soft skills I think you need to sell, and it's your attitude, it's your drive, it's your independence, and it's your ability to, do things without having to be, to actually take feedback and be humble. That's my opinion. Thomas, I'll pass it to Scott in a sec too, and the rest of the crew. What are your thoughts on those comments, Thomas?
No, I think they're all very solid. Being in outside sales and being basically in the field for 5 years, it's a big difference from going from in-person meetings and shaking hands and trying to convey those kind of soft skills behind the camera. And that's definitely kind of one of those areas where I've had people who have given me feedback. They're like, dude, we think you're great. We think you'd kill it, but you just kind of come off as a dick on the phone. And there's probably some truth to that, but it's definitely kind of one of those areas where I'm trying to polish it, because I could go through like a list of like, hey, this is what I do, this is what I do, to like make me not look like a dick. But it's still one of those things where I'm still trying to find the proof in the pudding.
Okay, cool. I'm curious. I've seen some great things in here about smile when you speak and grit. Here's one thing I would recommend is, I think the smile when you speak thing, I think a lot of people rely on the crutch of, hey, I'm just like this. I don't have a bunch of tonality to my voice. I don't have a bunch of passion and energy. I am an introvert. And by the way, as we all know, introverts make the best salespeople a lot of the time. We just don't, it's this weird misnomer that they don't. But what I would say to someone, like, I'm not saying those are your issues, but if they happen to be any of those, like, dude, just work on it, man. Like, your self-awareness is great. The fact you're bringing this up, get on a phone with your buddy, with a family, with friends, and be like, let's just do a test 5 minutes. How did I sound to you? Did I sound bored? Did I sound mean? Did I sound disinterested? Did I sound flat? Or did I sound enthusiastic? Did I sound passionate? Did I sound interested? Did I sound curious? Or whatever the things are you want them to feel. I'd suggest those things I labeled, those 4 things, are probably good things. And also, what drives me nuts is, and hopefully, I don't know if people realize they do this or not, is when you're like, okay, great talking to you, bye. And they just say, they just hang up. They don't say bye. I don't know if you're probably not that guy, Thomas, but like that to me is something where some people aren't self-aware that leaves someone feeling crappy. Anyway, Scott, what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I was curious whether or not you're telling yourself that story or whether people are telling you that story when it comes to outside sales versus inside sales and being on the phone. If you're telling that story, then you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're mentally putting yourself behind the 8 ball. You're creating an additional barrier for yourself that you have to overcome. And that's going to shine through when you have conversations with people. You see what I'm saying? You have to be cognizant of what you sound like and who you are and your strengths and weaknesses. So this element of self-awareness is super, super important. So a couple of people are saying, hey, try smile when you speak. Yeah. Also try varying the tone of your voice. Try mixing up how fast you speak and then slow it way down, right? So you're just going to come across as like, here's Thomas, just like this all the time. Just like a shooting star all the time. Same pitch, same speed, same emotion or lack thereof. Same use of hands or lack thereof, same facial expression or lack thereof. So you have to fuss around with those things. Stand up, sit down, walk, talk into the mirror, right? You just got to play with all of these kind of things. And when it comes to selling yourself, this part is really confusing for me, because it's like, how can any of us actually sell something better than we can sell ourselves? I don't understand that. I really don't. So if you're struggling with that, to me, like, there's a self-esteem, self-confidence issue going on, because there's no fucking way in my mind that Scott can sell a product better than Scott can sell himself. So how can Thomas sell a product better than Thomas can sell himself? So you have to find a way to get comfortable with tooting your own horn. You have to get comfortable with the fact that you're an expert in XYZ thing. And when somebody says, well, Thomas, you've been in outside sales, you've never been in inside sales before, I'm not sure how you're going to do this. If I'm you, my response would be, I really don't understand why it's any different, to be honest with you. First of all, I've done a job that's harder than being inside. I've walked around the streets of Scottsdale when it's 120 degrees in the summer, sweating my ass off, closing fucking deals. You're telling me that sitting in my home office in an air conditioner with a bubble water next to me is harder than that? I don't think so. See what I'm saying? So when you get like a punchy question that puts you on the defensive, what's the best thing you do? You punch back. When somebody bullies you, what did they tell you when you were in school? Punch the bully in the mouth. That's what they tell you. The bully thinks twice. So you come at me with a difficult question like that, I'm going to come at you with a funny little story. Right? So you're too much on the defensive and lacking confidence in yourself. and you're not making adjustments in the areas that you are potentially weak. That's what I think of as I sit here and listen. And granted, I know nothing about your circumstances and situation, so I apologize if I am way off, but that's what I pick up.
No, I think that's great feedback. And I think I was talking to a recruiter today and she's like, I don't know why the hell you're going for inside sales when you've done outside work. You've been told F off to your face by different people. And it's just, I guess it's just kind of one of those tonality things where when you walk in the door and you have meetings and you've got inbound leads, all the other setups for you, you can kind of do a lot of recon. But then when you're behind the screen and you're having these conversations across Zoom, WebEx, whatever, cold FaceTime calls, then you're able to, it's just a different environment. And it's one of those things where it's like, in reality, I probably just shouldn't be going after inside sales jobs because I'd prefer to be outside, So I think maybe
that's a whole different
to
conversation. I mean, your heart is not in it to be inside, then you're not going to shine through appropriately. So that's a different part of the conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, man. What I'm going to propose is, why don't I spend 3 minutes putting a bow on this customer story thing, and then let's move on to just exactly what Thomas did there, whatever's on your mind, and we'll tackle it. Does that sound good? All right. I'm going to share screen again here, and a couple things I want to talk about. So first of all, we talked about why they're important. Evokes emotion, social proof, right? People want to know that they see.
Hey, Dave, sorry, we got a white screen again.
Oh, damn it. Sorry. There we go. All right. How's that? Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So why customer story is so important? Evokes emotion, social proof, like knowing they're in good company, helping your champion build confidence in what you're actually providing them. Your prospect can picture themselves using it, brings your solution to life. I mean, that's one thing we always hear is how do I stop from getting stuck at the champion? And let's talk about that in a few minutes. But one quick thing I'll say there is, let's say you've asked for the meeting with the champion, like the executive decision maker, the above the line folks, and they say, no, don't worry, I'll take it to them. There's a couple things to do there. One, you could do a quick video, for example, and be like, hey, do you mind if I just put a video together for Mary, who's your VP, and just explain what it is that you're sending them? And like 9 times out of 10, they'll say, well, maybe 6 to 8 times out of 10, they'll say yes. And that can be super impactful. It allows you to find a way to connect with them and the story doesn't get lost. Also ask them like, yeah, sure. What were the key takeaways you've taken from this to actually see how well they actually pitch it? Because we know we're the best pitching at this, going to be better than our actual champions. So there's a couple of things there, but in terms of a number of you may say, listen, there's some white papers my company has, but they're not really relevant to this new market we're going after, or this new product. Or you might be in a small organization and actually not have white papers and case studies. And here's one thing I really recommend. I did this, started doing this about 6 years ago, and I was VP sales at the time, but it doesn't matter. You could be individual contributor. The point's the same, and that is marketing and CS. They're all super busy. They're great, but they don't have time sometimes to get you exactly what you need when you need it. Take this on yourself, right? Go to your VP and say, hey, do you mind if I talk to the person in CS and just ask them who our top customers are, give me a couple names, I'd love to chat with them. And then just have a 5-minute convo with them, like set up a time. Because what's funny is you're gonna get some people that are gatekeepers in your organization and go, no, that's not your job, that's my job. And it's like, wait, I was hired because I'm supposed to be a really good communicator and you don't want me talking to a customer? Like there's something wrong with that. So it's okay, but have your boss fight that fight if you are an individual contributor. If you're a VP, I recommend you ask for permission for a couple of your team members to do this from someone in marketing or CS, and then give them a call. What I found very quickly was I'd have 3 or 4 calls set up for like 5 to 15 minutes. And I would hear so many valuable stories. I'd ask CS, who's the power user? Who's the person that uses this the most in ABC customer? I want to talk to them and be like, how has this changed things for you since the beginning? What was it you were hoping it would change? And has it done that? And you get little sound bites that you can use that are so valuable, and they're first person, which is great. And then ask them about the ROI, like, quantitative, how has this changed things for you? And getting a couple of those, super powerful. And then of course, your concern might be, well, wait a sec, am I calling and telling them I'm a sales rep? Why don't you just say, yeah, I'm account executive of the company. I want to know how things are going. We're just calling a few customers to make sure they're happy. And then you can have your CS person join if they want. But if not, just say, if there is any laundry list things they want you to take back, ticket numbers or the such, just write it down and say, yeah, sure. Our folks will get back to you later today, right after this call. But man, like be scrappy, hustle, like don't be the victim. Oh, CS didn't get me the case study. You know what? Screw that. The best people, as you know, you're the best people. You take initiative.
Yes.
So that's my 2 cents. Scott, comments?
No, I like the last sentence because I get really frustrated when I hear people say they don't have the things that they need. And I'm like, well, did you go get the things that you need and create the environment necessary and required for you to succeed? And if the answer is no, I get frustrated. So I like the way that you ended that right there.
Awesome. And then I'll really try and tie this up in the next minute or two. When should we use it? Any freaking time. During your discovery? Absolutely. The top thing we hear from reps is, oh, I don't want the prospect to feel put out. I'm playing 20 questions. The best thing you could be doing is asking the questions for them, because you're customizing your pitch to them later. It's in their best interest. But one way to actually kind of make it a give and take is add a couple of customer stories, or one maybe when you're going back and forth in discovery. Plus use it during your demo. Plus use it when you're actually going to close the deal. And then the last thing is, how many customer stories do you share on average? I'll just get to the point here. Our data has told us 3 stories in a 30 to 45 minute call. That may blow your mind. Some of you may be like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. A number of you, I'm willing to bet, don't. I didn't used to, until I actually saw the data in our insights from our customers. And I mentioned that in a post today, and the vice president of data insights or something from the Challenger cell jumped in as like, yeah, we totally agree. Our data says the same thing. Here's a link to the case study. So it's kind of nice. Like, we already knew it because we've had thousands of reps, but it's nice hearing that now you've got 2 sources saying it. And I think Gong stuff validate that as well. I don't know if it's exactly 2 or 3, but anyway, I think that could probably successfully put a bow on the customer story part. I just want to, any questions on the customer stories before we dive into anything sort of sales conversation related?
I'm ready to hear a few people's pitches.
Me too. Let's hear some. And by the way, just to tie it together for you,
there's a question.
Okay, great. Let's see here. How detailed should I present my success stories? And Donnie, where are you? Let's see. You want to jump on and thanks for the question. Let's talk about this. So what's give me some more context.
So I'm currently formulating a customer success story. I have a meeting next week with a VP of sales and a VP of head customer success manager role. The story that I have in mind is about a time where I worked at Nintendo as a representative. And how detailed should I get into to the point where I deliver the data, the time frame, the quality of the solution that I provided to a customer?
All right, here are some of the guideposts I would recommend. Do it in less than a minute. You don't need more than a minute. I would follow the framework I put there, in the chat. And let me throw that in there again. In this Google document, you'll see a link to our customer story sound bites. I recommend using that framework. I would take what's in your head, write it down there, and practice it a few times in front of the mirror with buddies or whatever. And by the way, the reason the masterclass link's in there is because you sign up for that, you get a 5-day free trial. And I'm not trying to sell anything here, honestly, at all. But there's links on how to do effective customer stories that I put in this document just for this crowd. And those links will link to the masterclass, which is completely free. Like, don't pay afterwards if you don't want, that's cool. But it gives you something for the next 3 days that you can use. So that's my feedback for you, man.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Anything else on the customer story side? And let's, as Scott said, like, let's get into it. Like, I'd love to hear a customer story. I'd love to hear, leaving off with, you tell us what the pain is, and I'll say, oh yeah, I've been experiencing this blah lately as the prospect, and dive into your story.
Who wants to go first? Cynthia. I'm gonna call on
You
you.
put me on the spot. I mean, I'm happy to role play, but I don't, all the products I sell are tend to be technical. So right now I'm selling trade surveillance, and before that it was vessel tracking. So I don't know how deep you can go.
Well, the question is, do your prospects have a pain point? Yes or no?
A pain point. Okay. Yeah, well, let's see. For trade surveillance, they have to, so financial institutions have to track any anomalies in their trading. Otherwise, they can be heavily fined or restricted from trading by the government. The SEC can have them.
Perfect. Now think of the person that you typically would be talking to as the prospect. What's their title?
It would be a compliance manager.
Okay, so you told us what keeps the compliance manager up at night, right? So
Right.
now your story is simply going to be linking to that. What story is there? And hey, we don't want to like crazy. I know Scott wants to put you on the spot, and I'm fine too. But it's cool for you to bow out of this gracefully too, because I don't expect every single person here to have a customer story ready to go. I really don't. But if have you got something that you're familiar with in your organization where you've solved for that same problem with that same kind of prospect in the past?
I mean, I know use cases, but I couldn't specify to a specific story. I know use cases because I'm new to the role. But really everyone who's trading globally and particularly in the US, they have to account for these anomalies. So it's a pain point that they all know. I think the differentiator would be, I think, like entities. So if you're talking to a hedge fund, you'd want to say, and hedge funds are looking at this because did you hear that these guys, XYZ company, just got fined? I'm sure you know about it because everybody on the street knows it. Do you want to be that next one? That would be the pain I would be looking at, right? Something that they know, a competitor or a colleague in the space. So my pitch would be, hey, Dave, I know you're the head of the hedge fund XYZ. I'm not sure how you're solving for your trade surveillance requirements for the SEC, but you must be familiar with my solution here at NASDAQ. Is that correct? I mean, or how are you doing that? Or is this something that you deal with?
I've heard about it. Yeah.
And so I'm not sure how you're solving for it, but we work with 80% of the hedge funds in the US and 75% globally. And they are, this is a huge issue because regulations are getting tighter. I'm sure you heard about that recent incident with ABC company that they've just fined heavily, 1.2 million or billion or whatever. So that's something, for a lot of trading strategies that have come under scrutiny recently. Is that something that you're involved in as well? And if so, how are you solving for that?
Yeah, it is. We've got some internal processes that I think are pretty tight for solving that, to be frank.
So may I ask, how are you doing that? I mean, I've heard everything from spreadsheets to our competitors, Accutune. They, are you using it? In fact, I may ask, I don't want to pry, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, we use a spreadsheet. We use a spreadsheet for everything today. Seems to work great for us.
Yeah, so you haven't had, so when the SEC comes in or the regulators come in, is that something that they're comfortable using? Do they scrutinize you extra? Because the reason I ask is because the solution that we have is very streamlined. The SEC is actually our customer. They use the solution, so they're very familiar with it. So they're very comfortable with it. So in terms of when they do reviews, it's something that they use themselves, are comfortable with. So those reviews tend to go quicker, especially if you're in compliance. Have you had that on average? How long with the spreadsheets that you submit, does it take for any sort of investigation to be resolved?
Here, let's time out of this. So I love the discovery you're going into, right? Like, great example of instead of feature dumping, you're really wanting to understand what pain I'm going through. I gave you a deer in the headlights. So you're like, hey, these are 2 or 3 of the things that we hear people in your position struggle with or how they do it. I'm like, yeah, spreadsheets. It's funny how often that's relevant, right? Where, the person, we're used to doing sales calls all day. The buyer sometimes isn't. So they may not necessarily understand exactly what you're asking them. Like, well, what she was asking is, do we have a third-party solution we're using, or are we doing it in-house, right? But I like it. And then you'll get a pass on the customer story because you're new to the organization. Those come with time, but go chase them down. Find out what case studies and stuff you have. If you don't have them, I would recommend reaching out to some customers with the blessing of your organization and asking them for some specifics so that you can, you don't need your own firsthand stories. People think that, but you don't. But it is nice to have, because if they're not your firsthand story, that's fine. No one's in your credibility. And about one of our customers, our marketing team, actually, they contacted them, did an interview. Here's what I found, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, thanks for jumping in there.
No
I
worries, thank
appreciate it. Let's now move from customer stories to just absolutely anything from hello to goodbye in sales. How can I help? I'd love to understand what questions you might have. Let's see a show of hand, raise your hand, and we'll jump in there. So absolutely anything sales call related, it could be demo, could be presentation, could be discovery, could be closing. I'll throw some things out there. If I don't hear specific things, I'm happy to share some of the do's and don'ts that we've learned, but I'd love it to be more organic here.
Hey, Dave, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I know here where a lot of us are, very focused on B2B. Does anything change when it goes to B2C, direct to consumer? How does the structure of the call change? How does the flow change? I mean, how does the customer stories change?
Probably lots. We're 1 out of 10 in giving advice in that area. So I'm not even going to go there. We don't work with companies unless we're talking B2B. And that might be silly, but we're just very, very, very targeted in one specific area. Great call out. And but I could give you a hypothesis, but we haven't coached one direct to consumer company. So I don't want to give any feedback there.
Totally fine. Thanks.
Yeah. But we're humans selling to
So
humans.
I got a question for you as well. So This is actually my first Tequila Tuesday. Excited to be here. So with my company that I work for, we do custom swag. So there's a million competitors. If you type in like custom swag near me in Google, you're going to see a million results. So how do we tell the story that we're better than our competitors without absolutely bashing them? Because we've done that where we're like, oh, our competitors, they're 90-day turnaround time, they're super expensive. So how do we tell that story without looking like dicks, basically?
Wait. Can I interject here, Dave, for a second?
Yeah, man.
How do you do it now? Give us the baseline.
So if someone mentions that they're working with our competitors, first and foremost, we'll say, oh, they actually outsource a lot of their production. We do a majority of production in-house, so we have better price points and better turnaround times.
Okay, and do you ask that? What are the questions that lead up to them saying that?
So normally what will happen is, we have the initial call. So most of our leads are coming through Google and Facebook. So we'll be going through the process with someone and it'll get to the point of okay, they have the invoice, we're ready to move forward. And then they'll say, I'm actually looking at some other proposals from 5-6 different companies. I'll get back to you. So that's when we actively reach out to them to try to give all those points of why we're better, why it's easier to work with us, and why ultimately they should give the business to us.
Yeah, so I think this is such a freaking perfect question for this discussion. First and foremost, I really respect the fact you're saying, how do I do this without bashing my competitors? We all on here know that we don't bash competitors, right? It's a bad look. I let the competition do that because they're just going to shoot themselves in the foot. First time you have someone you meet and they're talking behind someone's back, oh, this person on Tequila Tuesday, blah, 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 this person on, and you're like, they're going to be talking about me in a minute, right? And it's just a bad look in terms of wanting to build trust, credibility. And the truth is you don't have to resort to that. So I'm good for you. You're already halfway around the track by not being that person. The next part would be, it comes down to good discovery and being okay asking challenging questions. The way I recommend you handle that is let's role play a bit. I'll be the customer or I'll be the salesperson and you be the customer. And you and I have just talked, we've got to like you said, I presented pricing and everything. And now what are you about to say about checking out competitors?
Yeah, so Dave, thanks for sending those numbers over. Everything looks great. I'm actually talking to a few different companies right now, so I'll get back to you once we make our decision.
I totally respect that. Can I just ask you a couple of questions on that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. So how long are you looking to take to make this decision, just roughly? Because I know you said that you've got this big conference coming up and you need a bunch of swag quickly, but what are you looking at there?
2 or 3 days max.
Okay, cool. And when we jumped into the process, I think you mentioned that we were actually one of the last to the party, and that's cool. But I think at this point, it's really helpful for us because, as you can imagine, I have these calls all day, every day. And what I want to be first and foremost is a thinking partner with you. Do I want you to move forward with this? Of course we do. Like, yeah, 100%. Why? Because I believe in what we do and I see how happy our customers are. And we spent half an hour talking about what's important to you. And I really, really feel it's an awesome fit here. Now, having said that, let's talk it through. Can I ask who else you're looking at?
So we're looking at swag.com, Swag Up, Swag RS, a couple of them.
Okay, great. And have you talked to those guys yet?
Yeah, we have invoices from everybody.
Okay, this is perfect because what I love to do at this stage, and my customers tend to find this helpful, hopefully it's helpful for you as well, is let's just talk through, like when you're looking, price is one thing, of course, right? But value is another. You said this, and this is important to you. How do they do relative to those 3 points? And how would you actually rank us in comparison to them?
To be honest, the other guys were a little bit cheaper.
Okay, fair enough. Let's dissect that a little bit. Is cost everything to you, or are there 3 other things you mentioned, blah, blah, and blah? Also, how would you index that in terms of giving it a weighting for being important to you guys?
Yeah, so turnaround time, quality, cost, all those things are important.
Okay, great. So I've got a deep respect for our competition, frankly, and I don't, but what I do want to do is point out that I know some folks out there are, whatever you said earlier, offshoring it, et cetera, and here's why customers have left the competition and gone to us, and specifically left a couple of those companies. One is, yeah, they got a cheaper price somewhere, but they were absolutely let down in the specific area you're talking about. And that's something that we take a lot of pride in. Yeah, you're going to pay more, like I have than the competition. But overall, when you look at the value you're getting, this is why customers stay with us. And it's why customers switch from those competitors and stay with us. They're paying a bit more, but they're getting the ROI because they're not getting shipping issues. They're not getting delays. They're not showing up at a conference and not having half their stuff. And the products just seem sometimes to be inferior. And again, I don't want to get into specific names and competitors and that kind of thing, but I just want to share with you what other customers have told me. Tell me how, I'd love to hear, like, how does that all resonate with you?
Yeah, that sounds good. We're looking for a partner and someone that's really going to help us grow.
Okay, so how far, can I ask, from a pricing perspective, when you've got our quote, what are we talking here in terms of being apart? Are we because we're never miles apart, to be frank, but what does that look like?
Yeah, you guys are like 10% above everybody else.
Okay, and
can I interject one question here?
Yes.
When somebody says that to me after they've told me they have other cheaper people, I ask one question. Quick question for you, Alex. If that's the case, why are we still talking? And then I literally just shut the fuck up. It's like, why are we still talking then? Just curious. Then what happens is what? That person then has to tell me what's so great about me. Otherwise, they hang up. Either way, that's the perfect outcome. Either literally hang up on me right now and save my time, or tell me how great I am.
That's perfect.
After you're done telling me how great I am, there's your opening. And you're like, okay, well, sounds like those things are pretty important. How do you weigh all those things that you said you love about me versus the fact that I'm $10 a month more? Are we not going to go out because I'm $10 a month more? So that's my one question. If somebody has told you you're more expensive than XYZ other people, and they're still talking to you, just say this one question. Hey, quick question for you, Alex. If that's the case, how come we're still talking? And just let them speak.
So 2.5 years ago, I reached out to Scott because I've heard a lot of great things about him. And I asked if he'd be an advisor for our company, and he agreed. You're hearing why right now, right? You already knew why. You know why I respect this man so much. But I mean, boom, absolutely. So I like what Scott said. A bunch of you, here's the thing, Scott can pull that off in the way he said it a lot easier than some of us. We can all pull it off in our style, right? So Scott's not asking you to do it the way he did it. Like,
that's right.
You know,
right.
we have to put it in our own sort of persona, right? Our authentic selves. But I love that. But I would still do everything I just recommended, because like on top of that question, because your answer to that question will lead into everything I just went into, right? So if Scott led, if I led with that, I'm like, so yeah, I have to ask, man, like, why are we still talking? And then you know, however you answered that, I would riff off that to actually get to all the spots we were just getting to, right? And that we just got to. And I probably gave you a little bit of FOMO, like, oh, wow, wait. So if I go with a competitor, and Dave's saying that there's a bunch of competitors that have actually moved to his company, man, I don't want a bad experience. And he says they stay there. And he mentioned a couple brands, and he's owning it. So this is the other thing, right? You want to own it. Like, I own it. We're not for everyone. We're not the cheap. I hold that as a badge of honor. You know why? Because it's freaking quality. And, you know, you can't sell on fear. In terms of you being afraid to lose the deal so much that you just go down, down, down on price. And you need to be prepared to lose a few deals because of that. But if you really, really articulate the value, and you help them understand the value, and you quantify that, and you paint the picture of what scenario B might look like, you know, more often than not, you're going to win them over to your side. Anyway, is that helpful, Alex?
Yeah, that was good. That's way better than what I was doing. So I definitely got to start using that. And the why are we still talking? I love that. So I'm going to have to keep that in my back pocket.
So Alex, like, I'm sure you already know this and you'll probably do it, but like, write it out. Take it, get it out of your head, write it down on paper, and now it's repeatable and rehearsable. So whatever parts of Dave's feedback or mine or your own that you're going to implement, like write the rebuttal to that particular objection up. Write that scenario up. And now you just do the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Got it.
Right? That way you don't have to wing it when it does come up.
Exactly.
100%. I love that. What else we got? We got, what, 8 minutes left. Do we have time for one or two more, Scott?
Yeah, if we have anybody braver than the guy who's here for his first fucking time, badge of honor to Alex, shows up for his first time and goes right for it.
Scott, I've got one.
There we go, Brent.
Dave, I work for Lessonly, so I start from like kind of finding a champion. Could just be like a manager, get up to a VP. Call I just closed today. I started manager, went to VP of sales, and then chief revenue officer. I'm asking discovery throughout the entire process as I get new people on the call, obviously. How do you ask discovery questions without like belittling the person every time you move up? So like, I'm not asking a chief revenue officer the same questions I'm asking a sales leader, like a sales manager, but you don't want to like just make that sales manager who obviously recommended you to the VP of sales, who recommended you to the CRO to get on the call. How do you phrase your discovery questions in a polite way, but saying like, I've got to ask you much bigger and better questions now that I've got the main decision maker on the phone. Hey, sales manager, I'm not neglecting you, but please kind of hang to the side in a respectful way. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. You know what most people do? They don't do it right, and they don't even spend time talking to the CRO when they're on there. They just talk to their champion. And I tell you, that sounds so counterintuitive, but it happens all the freaking time. So, you know, first, the fact that you're even addressing that person in the call is really good. And we've seen a call where they had the GM on of this huge company. We've all heard of it. And they asked the GM, so can you tell me how many outbound leads your SDRs are doing on a weekly basis? And this is like, of course he's not gonna know that answer. That's embarrassing, right? So to your point, you don't want to embarrass the other folks on the call because, you're feeling like you're like, oh, finally I get to talk to this decision maker. And there's great ways to handle that. We'll talk about that. The other thing you don't want to do is embarrass the woman or the man, whoever it is, the CRO, by asking them questions that they're not going to freaking know the answer to, right? So I think you want to have your list of questions. That's number one. You want to know that persona certain well. How long have you been, were you with Seismic before, or you always been with Lessonly, and how long have you been with the company?
So I was with LexisNexis previously. I am coming up on 3 months with Lessonly. My first day there was when we got acquired.
Congrats, man. That's great. So what you're going to learn more and more is what that CRO cares about. In the meantime, you probably already learned about a bunch of it from your conversations, but I would double down on your most experienced reps who have had hundreds of these conversations and say, what does the CRO care about with this specific buying motion? What are the 3 things they're going to want to, that I'm going to want to get out of that person? They're going to want to talk about. Now, you probably already know the answer to that, but I'm just saying, just in case. And when you're on there, I think you can very casually move the conversation, and you can set it up that way. Really looking forward to this discussion. I've already talked to, John, who's the sales manager, and Jane, who's the sales director, and Mary. I've been looking forward to jumping on and having a conversation with you as well. As a framework for our discussion here, there's a ton of things we've already discussed that gives me a pretty good understanding as to the challenges. I'm just going to summarize those here for the first minute or two. And then I'd love to just specifically get your thoughts and ask you to weigh in, specific to the strategic direction your organization's going, and obviously at each line in the organization, people care about different things. I'd love to understand, when you're looking at the next year at the organization, what things you care about specifically with, with LMS platforms, or how you're doing your learning, or how you're empowering your people to learn, whatever it is. That is what that's what I would recommend you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Did that answer your question though, Brent? Like, does it, like, I don't want this to be some like, oh, Dave just said a bunch of platitudes and it wasn't helpful at all. Like, challenge me. Is there anything on there where you're like, wait, yeah, but I still want to know this?
I still want to know, you get 30 minutes, you get the CRO on the phone. You still try to incorporate your champion and like maybe that VP that you won over in an earlier meeting. Like, I don't want them to just feel like I got through them and then just threw them to the side the second like a C-level got on the phone.
Are they on that call with you, Brent?
I've had both scenarios where they are and they're not. The one I just went through, they were there.
Okay, so reference your conversation with that particular champion. So when I was talking to David on Tuesday, he mentioned this specifically. Just throw in little nuggets like that involve that person. And in doing so, that sort of gives them the microphone, if you will, and lets them feel like, okay, I can engage in this conversation. This is not just Scott talking to the CRO. So reference them, reference the conversations, call on them, literally just involve them.
Yeah.
Right? Have them play, off of each other a little bit. The best thing you could do is you get to a situation where the VP and the CRO are fucking pitching each other. And you're just sitting there sipping your cocktail going, this is pretty fun. This is right. Now you know you're doing your job the right way. So my strategy in that situation is I got to involve them.
Yeah, and if you're able to show how you can connect the dots, they'll be super impressed. The CRO will be impressed. Where you're like, oh, that's a great point. But Jane, I know when you look at the field level, you said that 10 of your AEs, blah, 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 blah. How does that relate to, this? That CRO is going to be super impressed. And so don't ask questions for the sake of it, but, absolutely don't hold back from, you should engage everyone. You should call them out by name. That's the best practice we recommend, is engaging everyone on the call. Most reps do not do that. Good luck on your call. Ping me if you have any other questions on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a chat about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see we got one more question in 2 more minutes. I can stay as long as ever. I don't know if we usually have a hard stop. Scott, do we have time for Shafiq's
Yeah,
question?
if we have one more, I missed it, but go ahead. Whoever's got the next question.
Hi, Shafiq.
Yeah, hi, how are you? Thank you very much for taking my question. I know it's late.
You bet.
Sorry about the background. I got 4 kids.
Well, which one of the 4 was the one that screamed earlier? And are
Right,
they
yeah,
okay?
Right
Is she
here,
okay?
yeah, she's fine.
Okay, that's good.
She's fine. So after 3 weeks of training. Yesterday, I had my first call. It was Monday. And one of the calls was 12 minutes long, just about 12 minutes. And I thought I had a pretty good call after all this voicemail and no, not interested, not interested. And I had that, but she had the control over the call the whole time. She was asking all the questions, and those are the right questions that tell me that she has the pain points that our solution can get rid of. But how do I pivot from her questioning to me questioning so that I control the conversation?
I love it. So jump into our masterclass and have a look at the video on this. This happens all the time. First thing is do an agenda. I'm sure you already did that, because then there's a roadmap you both agreed on. You've asked them, hey, is there anything else you want to cover that's important to you? So there's buy-in there. If they veer too far off and it's still valuable for the process, and you know that because you've seen the buyer journey for hundreds of calls before, great, entertain that. But if it's taking you way off the left field, you're not going to get through some of the key things. It's not part of the critical path to what should be achieved by the end of the call for that prospect, and get them back in line. And I think I would use things like, we don't recommend talk tracks, we recommend process. Scripting, never really, or hardly ever, but process. And so my process in that would be, I can tell by the questions you're asking that you are, I would say we rank our often our customers in terms of high proficiency, low proficiency, in terms of understanding the business, etc. Clearly, you're one of the high proficiency ones. I think we can go straight to some of the questions here, and I want to answer those for you. Can you just give me a roadmap? Because I know when we talked earlier on in the agenda, there's like 5 things we said we'd cover. We got 20 minutes left. Happy to put like 5 minutes aside for these questions now, if that works for you, and then move on with the rest of them. Does that work? I mean, you want to do it in a respectful way, right? I don't know if I would do it quite like I said, but something along those lines. I've done it before, and usually they go, "Oh, yeah, right. Sorry, you know what? I don't really need to know that stuff right now." And the guy's like, yeah, "Let's just, we can talk about that later." And then you can be like, "Okay, great." So, but then you lose. I see people lose control all the time. The way to bring it back is, man, that's a good discussion. That's usually for our next call. If it's okay with you, I'll just quickly answer that. And let's get on to some of these other questions, because I really need to be able to understand this in order for us to get that quote for you. But let's talk about that next time. Like, just things that keep respectfully bringing them back, acknowledging that they're saying, and always you appreciate it, creating a space somewhere else that isn't in your next half an hour, 20 minutes, that is them doing that. Is that helpful? Okay, good.
Thank you,
good.
Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for asking the question, and that's awesome.
All right, we're out of time. I have to take off, but Dave, you want to leave us with like a sound bite or two? We thank you for spending some time with us, everybody. I at the beginning of the chat, I dropped Dave's LinkedIn profile in there, as well as a link to Replayz, Dave's company. Dave, you want to leave us with any final thoughts?
My final thought would be well, first of all, thank you. I really enjoyed this chat. Every single one of you, I mean, I've looked at a few of your LinkedIn profiles. I know a bunch of you. You guys have so much experience. Like, we can all learn from each other. I can learn something from you guys. You go back to work. Yeah, sure. Like, think about some of the stuff we talked about. Feel free to dig into the masterclass. But peer coach, right? You can learn from your peers. They can learn from you. You don't have to wait for your sales leader. I know a bunch of you are sales leaders, but for individual contributors on here, like, ask one of your one of the top reps or other top reps to review one of your calls, or ask them to do a role play with you on ABC, right? So I'm not going to do a final sort of soundbite of, hey, here's the Replayz best practice. You know what? You guys have the knowledge among you, and I see team members not looking at, obviously we're not in office as much anymore, but even reaching out to their peers and saying, let's role play together. Let's let's put a scorecard together. Maybe I'll take that initiative and ask my sales manager if I can put a demo scorecard together and ask them what they think. That'd be my parting thoughts.
Fantastic. All right, everybody. Appreciate you. Thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. The recording and the replay will be up on demand. Shout out to Shafi's kids and to Catherine Robles and her Spanish that she graced us all with. See you all next time.
Thank you, Scott.
There we go. What a way to end it.